Bailey.
Hey, hello.
Hello. Thumb up.
Hey, Garfield.
Here comes Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan.
I see you. Down there.
So I just received Jonathan's notes for the minutes. Jonathan, can you hear us? Can everyone hear me?
I
hear you.
can.
Okay.
Jonathan?
Jonathan, can you hear us? He has a quizzical expression. Jonathan, can you hear us?
I just began to hear you, yes.
Okay.
Great. I was just saying that we received the some edits on the minutes that Malcolm had kindly presented to us. So
Yeah, I had left out that whole discussion because I was so involved in participating in it and I forgot to write it down. So I apologize to Jonathan for having him and put in a position to amend it, but I think the amendment's good.
okay, so it's 1 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. I'm gonna pick up my glasses here. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16th, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Housing Subcommittee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. No in-person attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the meetings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL Chapter 7C, 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission from the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. So the town is recording this meeting. And I believe members of the press, I see the edge there, and anyone else. We have 4 attendees, 5 attendees. So this meeting is being recorded by the town. Okay, so what we're going to do is take a roll call. Malcolm.
Here.
Garfield.
Here.
Jonathan.
Here.
And I am here. Okay, so we have the minutes that were drafted, kindly, as I mentioned, by Malcolm, and Jonathan had submitted some edits. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at the edits?
I just saw it come over, so I did not get a chance to look at the edits.
Okay. Jonathan, do you want me to read what you had sent, or do you want to read them yourself?
If you want me to read it, I'm happy to read it.
Okay, I have it here in front of me, but yes, why don't you go ahead and read it?
This is to be inserted at the end after the spreadsheet discussion. As Ms. Davis attempted to move into citizen speak time, Mr. Hank pointed out that we had not talked about the STR law, which was on the agenda. He stated that it needed to be amended as passed at last year's ATM because it discriminated against long-term renters by specifically prohibiting tenants from any STR. Ms. Davis saw nothing wrong with that. One of the reasons put forth in bringing the bylaw amendment to the ATM was ostensibly to try to preserve affordability in our community for our residents. Mr. Hankin pointed out that the bylaw targets the least wealthy members of our community, full-time residents who may be on fuel assistance, electrical assistance, and who may be struggling to pay their rent. Mr. Fix seemed to agree. Ms. Davis said she put that in there because she was convinced that people would be renting multiple properties in order to do short-term rentals and landlords would be getting kickbacks. Mr. Hankin pointed out that we have a 0% vacancy rate in long-term rentals and that renters typically struggle to come up with the 3 months rent required to move in. He did not believe the notion of tenants renting multiple properties to do STR was even a possibility, let alone a threat to the community. Ms. Davis pointed out that the bylaw had been passed at ATM without amendment, so she did not think this was an issue that the subcommittee should address. Mr. Hankin disagreed.
So this edition just came in a few minutes before the meeting, so I'd like some time to go over it. There are some edits I'd like to make, Jonathan. So we can bring this back. If anyone objects, let me know. But there's a few things that I'd like to amend. Does anyone else?
Since we're talking about it, why don't we talk about it?
Yeah. Okay. So on the second paragraph, when it says Ms. Davis saw nothing wrong with that, I'd just like to say that I disagreed.
Okay.
And basically, let's see, as Ms. Davis. Malcolm, it says Mr. Ficht seemed to agree. We seem to
agree.
getting into the details.
We can take away the seem to.
Okay.
So you agreed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Jonathan, there are some notes that I'd like to say about this, and I can't remember if I said this at the time, but yeah, I really kind of see this as an economic development issue and a revenue generating issue, and I don't see that reflected in these minutes. I do remember saying the multiple properties and the rest of it, but there were some things that are left out that I do think this is a matter of economic development and generating revenue and not so much creating housing. So in terms of where this goes in, I'm not sure because I just received
Lee, I disagree with what you're saying, but I don't think you said it at the last meeting about economic development.
Okay, would have to check that, but okay. So, I mean, the main thing is that when at the beginning, I'll say that Ms. Davis disagreed. Garfield, did you get a chance to take a look at this? Do you want this sent to you, or, you know, I feel like there's more things I need to go through. Garfield, do you have that in front of you?
No, I don't, because I can't change the screen. But my thought is, first, a couple of things. One, are we, as a subcommittee, are we allowed to have an executive sessions? If so, I think this is something we need to discuss in-house. And I don't think it's the right time right now anyway to discuss it. And one other thing I'll say is the STR was passed and approved by the town meeting. So I'm not sure if we're speaking about it anymore is going to make any difference as it has been passed by the ATM, which means
well, I got to tell you, just about everything we're talking about in this committee requires town meeting approval. So to say that a change would require town meeting approval and that's a reason for not considering it. I mean, I don't agree with that.
What do you mean? I didn't say anything about a change.
Well,
Well,
I guess,
all of it, I mean, there exists town meeting, I mean, the town meeting approved bylaws that restrict where multifamily housing can be. And we would like to change that. I mean, I don't see the fact that town meeting passed this last year and
okay,
left this to me, which is a hole in
Okay.
the coverage. I mean, I don't see any reason for us not suggesting that it go back to town meeting and be amended if that's what we feel.
Okay,
If
and I
that's what
guess
the
I'm,
select board feels. That's,
and
okay, well,
I'm
yeah,
saying, yes, I don't feel that way because it has been passed. I guess, and if there was holes, in, we spent an extensive amount of time on this, an extensive amount of time. Quite a bit of attention was paid to it. There's a lot of back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. Just to do this again doesn't seem to be fruitful to me.
okay, I'm going to interject here. Sorry, just because this isn't, this topic isn't on the agenda right now, and we're really focusing on changing the minutes. So we will, you know, it's part of the housing plan worksheet, but in terms of just honing on this particular item, we're just looking at additions and amendments to the minutes. So my main note is that I disagreed with what Jonathan said. So if this is reflected in what Jonathan pointed out during the meeting, I'll go with that because I don't have the video in front of me. But to say that I didn't think it was an issue, you know, I'd like to just have it stand that I disagreed. So I would personally like to take a look at these additions. I don't feel comfortable signing off on this until I take a look. So,
okay, well, let's.
so can we
minutes
hold this
next
till the
meeting?
next meeting? Yeah, well, let's hold it, the minutes till the next meeting. And thank you, Malcolm. I know that it's hard to take the minutes while you're participating. So I appreciate your,
That's all right.
you're doing a much better job than I am. And thank you, Jonathan, for doing such due diligence with the minutes. I just want to have a few minutes to take a look after the meeting and compare notes. So moving ahead, subcommittees, announcements, and statements. Jonathan, we'll start with you.
I don't have any announcements.
Okay. Garfield?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Malcolm?
I'm good.
Okay. I have a few. So just with some updates with Construct, as you all know that I'm the development director of Construct, and this has come up a few times through planning board meetings and select board meetings. So just to clarify, Construct does have an offer on the Windflower. We have not closed yet. That is in the works. That's destined to close at in early December. So when we have a full closing, we'll be able to share with you more some specifics about that. But I just did want to let you know that it's a 13 unit in with a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom, 2 separate properties on the actual property. And once we close in early December, we'll be able to give you some more information. So I just wanted to confirm that. And that's one of the reasons why you really haven't seen it out there, because we have not closed, but we will be closing early December. The other item I wanted to bring up is that along with Construct, the Cassilis Farm in New Marlborough, we did close on that in September 29th. And that is a 20-acre estate that we acquired through after an auction, after the original buyer decided not to go ahead with that. So we do own that. And the item that we're going to be pursuing is making that into workforce housing. We have quite a lot of work to do. And there is a 1-bedroom house and a 3-bedroom house that will be detailing first in terms of making that into workforce housing before we start on the 14-bedroom main house. In addition to the 14-bedroom main house, we have a 6-bedroom annex, which also needs quite a lot of work. So we're in the pre-development phase, and the hope is that in next year in winter, we'll be applying for the pre-development funding and spring 2024, we'll have a groundbreaking. And hopefully followed by that, we'll be having some occupancy. So that's another workforce housing initiative. The New Marlborough Affordable Housing Trust and the town was very generous in providing some money towards that initiative. So that has closed. And construct, yes,
Does New Marlborough have any affordable housing?
they do not. Absolutely. And that was one of the reasons why they really stepped forward. So the citizens came, and all the money, the funding that came to the project was from the citizens of New Marlborough, which is wonderful, including substantial funding from the town's affordable housing trust. So that's really exciting. And there is a single family home that Construct is looking at with a deed restriction that has been donated by the Tyringham Affordable Housing Association. So that's another property that we're looking into. So quite a few projects coming on stream with Construct, but because Windflower has been kind of talked about, I just wanted to clear the air and let you know that something is happening, but because we haven't closed, we're just keeping that under wraps for now. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is the good time as opposed to waiting for the
Yeah.
spreadsheet, but the planning board is currently working on several different initiatives that may or may not be on our spreadsheet. We're beginning to talk about alternative residential types and how our zoning fits in with that, and also how it fits in with the building codes in terms of multifamily and single room rentals and that kind of thing. We're looking at Stockbridge Road rezoning, which may include, that's what we're going to be discussing in the next meeting, which would include building incentives for building affordable properties along Stockbridge Road. We're looking at streamlining, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, but I'll just mention it again. We're looking at streamlining site plan review by building up performance standards so that a lot of the projects that would come in, residential projects that come in, unless they're really big projects, wouldn't even have to go through site plan review. They'd just be by right, which would eliminate a lot of the court challenges that come to site plan approval. And then we're also looking at issues around driveways, and I think if we either have or will be recommending that the town code be modified to include more than two, to allow more than two curb cuts for a property that would allow for more access to a property for more housing.
Okay.
That would be the idea there. And last, this is kind of in combination with what was passed at the last town meeting, which had to do with increasing the number of units that could be on shared driveways.
Okay.
So the whole driveway thing, getting back to housing on properties is important. So
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you. I did watch-
driveways, not shared driveways.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Common driveways, not shared driveways.
I'm sorry. Common driveways.
So I had to, yes, so thank you for that. I did watch the planning board meeting, and I did have a nice talk with Chris this morning, filling him in on the worksheet that we began during our last meeting. And he's going to be putting together an executive summary, as you all might know, for the select board. And he's going to be working off the housing plan worksheet that we started, as well as his own notes. So it's going to be very collaborative. And I've shared with him this worksheet. And as we tweak it, he'll be using that to inform his executive summary. So we're just, we're really cognizant of duplicating efforts and trying to streamline the process. And part of this worksheet was really siloing all our efforts. So if it's, more planning board led, we could, put that in the planning board column. If it's something that the select board needs to take the lead on, or if it's real private developers, or if a home petition is needed, So that's one of the reasons really for the housing plan worksheet. And, I wanted to make sure that Chris felt that that would be helpful to the town in terms of creating this executive summary. Yes, Garfield.
I believe we had talked about having all of the alphabets together, and so because you just had mentioned, which just reminded me of not duplicating services.
Mhm.
That we might have the CPA and CPC and whatnot all
Absolutely.
of us get together. And we have, so I'm wondering if that's going to happen and when we might schedule it.
Yeah, I think that was a great idea that you brought up last meeting. And I think what we and correct me if I'm wrong, that we were going to continue with focusing on the worksheet. And when we felt that we'd gone through all the different strategies that had been suggested, it might be a time to start bringing in some of our supporters and stakeholders so that we could kind of collate and coalesce some of the information. But absolutely, I know the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has a meeting tonight. Garfield, do you know what they're going to be focusing on in particular, or?
I do not know what you're focusing on.
Okay. So I think that if you guys are amenable, we could take a look at the housing worksheet, the plan. And what I tried to do was try to categorize it a little bit based on the lead entity. So at least that way we can say, okay, well, this is definitely something that is a zoning bylaw or a zoning amendment. This is something that the select board should take the lead on. Something with SRO, single room occupancies, that might be something that might be led with, a private entity, such as Construct. Doesn't necessarily need to be. So what's the feeling on the subcommittee? Do you want to revisit that and just have that on the screen and use that as to move forward?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay. All right. I will share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I've moved the categories a little bit around. Priority I put in the left, and obviously this is a work in progress, so nothing is set in stone. And just to remind you, the housing strategies were anything that came to us. So whether it's something from the Housing Needs Committee, can you see the cursor when I'm doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. So HNA is housing needs assessment. So that's referring to anything that was pulled from that. LD is just something that I found. Doesn't mean that I came up with the idea, but I was able to access it. We have the One Berkshire, the housing vision for the Berkshires that One Berkshire put together just last year, and so forth. So if there were specific strategies that you'd like to bring up, we could certainly just put it in this housing strategy column and make a note of that. Moving forward, any links that would make it easier for us to find additional information, that's what this link column is. The lead entity, this is what I was just talking about in terms of trying to focus on what board or what committee or what entity would be the best in terms of taking the lead. So what I did is I assigned numbers, and number 1 for town, meaning that, let's say Chris Rembold might be doing some investigation, the assessor might be putting together an inventory of property. So that's what that's referring to. 2 for planning board, 3 for select board, 4 for private. I just put private down in terms of, that might be a private developer or a nonprofit taking the lead for now. It doesn't mean that that's exclusive. Home rule petition. This is something that I was exploring. There's a few things that we would really need the state to legislate on for us to move forward. And it might be easier for us to consider home rule petition, writing up a home rule petition that would speed things along. So that's where the number 5 home rule petition comes in. And when we move further down here, we could explore that. So that's what that's about. And then 6 for housing, affordable housing trust fund. I think Chris mentioned, Garfield, correct me if I'm wrong, that that group might be looking at ADUs and
Yes.
really honing on that. So I put that in the affordable housing trust fund category just to make a note. Because what I was cognizant of is we didn't want anything to slip through the cracks. And if, let's say, one group was focusing on one particular strategy, we might be able to say, okay, well, you know, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is looking into that. And
We are doing, if I can just let you know, we are doing tiny house discuss and follow up, an ADU/tiny house report proposal.
oh, super. Okay. So I think that's in here. Let me just put my glasses on. Okay, so here. And obviously, you know, we could have 2 things under this, but if we know that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is looking into, at least that'll know that they're having a discussion. Is there anything since we had our last discussion that you wanted to add onto it, and then just to make sure we come back to it? Jonathan, Malcolm, is there anything that you want to just touch upon?
I went through trying to come up with my own mind in terms of level of effort and the impact, and I'm not sure if fiscal impact is the right term for there. I think we need to really assess what is the impact of this thing on meeting our housing goals. Is it high, medium, or low?
Okay. So do you think that would be covered possibly under goals and outcomes, and we could
well, I don't know. I don't know what you mean under goals and outcome, but I think if you're going to prioritize anything, you have to have the level of effort, high, medium, and low, and you have to have what is the impact, high, medium, and low. And to me, that's how, I mean, it's a simple way of determining priorities. If it's a you know, low level of effort and a high impact, then it's a slam dunk. If it's a high level of effort and a low impact, then maybe we should forget about it.
Okay. I think that's a really good point. All right, so I just I changed that to impact.
And you know, this is really important because as I went through this, there many of these things, in fact, all of these things you have a 1 as far as the lead entity is going to require staff time, sometimes significant staff time that we don't have. So, you know, some of these things we're going to have to figure out how to fund staff time to even do them. I don't think the 4 of us are going to volunteer to do all the legwork on some of these things. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why sharing this with Chris, so that he can say, hey, wait, this is, you know, way too much, or this isn't the best use of my time or the resources of the department, you know, that'll I think will speed things up in terms of really the amount of effort that's needed on the town or from the town. Jonathan or Garfield, did you guys have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think I'm a little confused because I'm looking at the one you sent, not the one you have on the screen, which you did not send. And you have one that says offer ADU and tiny home incentives, and that, I think that should be a priority.
Okay. Yeah, so you know, I can't share, we can't have a working Google Doc that we're all sharing together. So that's the reason why, you know, we're not on this as a document that's dynamic. But the tiny homes, let me just see what number that is. So number 22, so we're looking at the one on the screen right now, Jonathan. Offer ADU and tiny home incentives.
Yep.
Okay, so in terms of incentives, what are you thinking? Are you thinking
Well,
tax payments or subsidies?
I don't think the town's going to offer subsidies, but I certainly think that the real estate value could be frozen at the pre-ADU level for X number of years if they agree to rent that affordably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
So,
the other thing, which I've spoken to the planning board about, is that there is an ADU builder out of the Pioneer Valley that goes around to various towns and basically gives seminars on, what are ADUs and how do you build them, and what are the hurdles to the town. And so he's doing that in Maine, he's doing it in New Hampshire, he's doing it in Massachusetts. I suggest that we should organize something and bring him here and try to get the public involved.
okay. So some of the pushbacks, and you're probably the right person to talk to about this, that I've heard is, sometimes people don't want to be a landlord, and that, banks are reluctant to finance ADUs unless you have lots of equity in your home, and many people don't have excess equity. So the people that are struggling to get by have a home, they don't necessarily have enough equity to cover financing something else, such as an ADU. So what's your answer to that?
Well, each bank has a different policy, and I don't have a catalog of those. I know that Berkshire Bank no longer offers any construction loans.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are banks in Berkshire County that do offer funding for financing for ADUs.
Okay.
They should be identified and brought to the public's awareness, it seems.
Okay. So with this, obviously this will take research. So who do we think will do this? Who will talk to the banks? Who will, really get a pulse on whether people want to be landlords? Do they want an actual tiny house on their property? And
Isn't that the last item on the spreadsheet?
yeah, see, this is some of the things probably could be combined. So this is one of the things, maybe I can put the two together and we could just have ADUs together. That would probably be a smarter thing. What do you guys think?
Sure.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, you both put number 6 on there. So, you
Yeah.
put number 6 on both of them. So that's a good home for it, I think.
Okay. So I'll put this together.
I have a question. You can't see me. I don't know if you can see me. I don't know why that's like that. Oh, I know why. All right. This just happened to be something I heard the other day, and I think a gentleman had stopped in actually into Taft and asked about a farm, and he had a tiny home, and he knows Great Barrington allows them, and he was looking for a farm. Did we not talk about that at one point, to maybe have these homes placed on a farm, or make it so farmers could have these homes and a little access for their workers, etc.?
There is language in the zoning allowing multiple ADUs for farms, as long as they're for farm workers.
Yeah, I think I believe the CDC might have been looking at that, or they are looking at that currently. Some of the questions, I guess, are infrastructure and septic, and how that really looks. Whether the farmer has enough land, how the roads. So I think it's quite a big project. In theory, I think it sounds great, but I think logistics, it might be hard.
Well, the other thing is that movable tiny houses are ADUs.
Mm-hmm.
In an ADU, you have to have a primary residence. And so you cannot move a movable tiny house onto an empty piece of land and live there while you're farming.
Mm.
not
Yeah.
per the existing zoning.
Mhm. Well, that's that's one of the things that am curious about, like who's going to lead this exploration to all these, details of ADUs and movable homes. And so if we can, find someone, the Tiny Home Association, didn't they come to speak to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? Amy Turnbull, did she? Yeah.
Amy Turnbull.
Yeah. How did that go? Or is that worth having her come and speak to us? Or can you give us a sense?
Yeah, but it'd be worth having her talk to us, I guess.
Okay. Is there any takeaways when she did talk to you before?
Not that I recall. It was a while ago.
Okay.
A lot of stuff going on, so I don't know.
Okay. All right. I'll put a note, and she might be able to give us some.
And I will mention it this evening too in our meeting tonight and see what we actually.
Okay.
So I'll do that as well.
Great.
It's Turnbull, not Turnball.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. All right. Great. So I combined the two ADUs. Anything else that anyone wants to add? Sounds like the curb cuts. So Malcolm, you mentioned the curb cuts. Is this to facilitate people that want to create affordable housing, or could they, in theory, just make market rate housing? And how would this look?
I don't think our recommendation on the driveways had nothing to do with affordable housing. It was really just housing.
Okay.
So it wasn't an incentive. You can have another curb cut if you're going to make additional units affordable.
Okay.
We hadn't talked about that. We didn't say no, but we didn't. That's something we talked about.
Okay. All right.
And I don't think it needs to be. I mean, the point isn't so much necessarily about affordable housing in this particular case. It's just getting access to our property for housing, whether it's affordable with other incentives or whether it's market rate.
And I guess I'm assuming there would be buffer zones, and so it's not that it's completely by right. There would be some.
Well, there's still zoning involved as far as any building that goes on.
Yeah.
You can't do any building unless you have access to it. So this is just one
First
part
step.
of
Gotcha.
the solution.
Malcolm, since you're talking about driveways, the planning board is also discussing language to amend the town bylaws about number of curb cuts. Currently, curb cuts are limited to 2 per property, unless there's extraordinary, what was it, need or something that.
Yeah.
It was funny language, and so we're proposing to revise that from needs to benefits, and showing a few sample things that could be considered benefits, like creating additional housing. Because right now, with 2 curb cuts, and you could have a mile of frontage, you'd either have to divide it, or you can't put in another house. So it doesn't make any sense.
Okay. So they would have to go still through the site plan review. It's just that this would be the first. They could jump over one of the hurdles.
It's not site plan review. It's a driveway permit.
Yeah, it's a select board permit. And the select board then would be able to grant a third curb cut if the benefit was there. And the benefit being additional housing would be a primary benefit.
Okay.
Or one of the benefits. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is really a select board / planning board.
It is both in terms of the. It's not a planning. It's not a zoning bylaw. It's a general bylaw.
Okay. Great.
Isn't it, Jonathan? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But this would allow for more density on a. Okay.
Yes.
Potential.
Okay. I just wanted to focus on number 23, the home rule petitions. And I was talking to Chris about this earlier. some of the things such as a tax abatement or tax relief would need to come through either legislation, state legislation, or a home rule petition. And, state legislation could take years and years and years, and we're not guaranteed that that's actually going to happen. So my question to this subcommittee is, are we interested in pursuing writing any home rule petitions and bringing that to the select board in the form of expanding? I was focusing on myself, expanding property tax relief for low-income seniors. This was done in Boston, and I thought this was very interesting. I'll just click on this link. And, it would take some research to see really how this would look. Their property sales are quite large. They're looking at over 2 million. So we might want to look at closer to the median rate of Great Barrington, which might be, 500,000 or 600,000. But they did find a way to give some relief to qualified low-income senior homeowners. So I found this really interesting. And I can send a link to everyone if you want to look at this further. But has anyone looked into this, or is this new that you've
No,
Okay.
I've not, but it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
To explore.
Yeah. So, and this is something that, we, to kind of move it along, we would have to explore a home rule petition. And that's something that we could really take the lead on if we thought this was worth it, and bring something to the select board and bring to town meeting.
I remember correctly, and I think I'm spot on in this. Great Barrington's population of elderly folks is like 23%. So almost a quarter of our population. I think it does need to be definitely investigated, looked at, whatever term used.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the aging population, absolutely, we should be focusing on that as much as affordable housing, I think. And then there's the idea of a local option transfer tax. And this was something that I found. I'll click on it. Again, they did in Boston and Nantucket. But this is something that has been done in terms of an additional tax. And this tax would go towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, for example, and this would be used to relieve some of the impact for people looking for affordable housing. So this is something that would also potentially be a home rule petition. And again, it would be a local option transfer tax. And in this case, it might be a buyer would pay 1% of the portion of a purchase price over $600,000, and the money goes to, let's say, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So this was something that, if we were interested in, we could flesh out and explore bringing that to town meeting. Malcolm?
That previous article you brought up about Boston sounded like they were using their the excess property tax to fund this senior income, low-income senior housing, right?
Yeah.
So they went together.
Yeah, exactly. It was basically together. Yeah.
Yeah, they went together, and that would be a good use for it. In going back to your first question about the timing of these things, whether it's worth our while to do these things because there's such long range solutions, I think that really depends on going back to the chart and whether we think there's really high impact.
Yeah.
And certainly a way to pump some money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and perhaps increase the senior property tax relief.
Yep.
Those are all good things to me, and they're going to be long range things. But in my mind, they would be things that we should strive for, I think. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And, this is something I would be, very, very, pleased to help out and to work with town to drive this, because I think this is doable, but it will take some time and effort.
Yeah, and it's going to
This would-
take some
this would-
town resources, and that usually means Chris Rembold, so.
Yeah, well,
This would have a huge adverse impact on property values in Great Barrington. So,
Wow. Can you explain that, Jonathan?
Yes, please.
yeah, absolutely. It's hard enough to sell anything in Great Barrington, let alone Housatonic, because of the water situation. And all of the surrounding towns, they have fiber, they have low taxes, and we have high taxes, we don't have fiber, and we have Housatonic water, and no one wants to live here because our taxes are so high. And now you're effectively going to raise the price to buy into town, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think this is a good-
everyone's going to say, screw it, I'll just move to Alfred or Egremont.
Mhm. Well, Jonathan, you pick up you have a good point. There's always an argument to any housing strategy. And I think it's worth having this discussion and fleshing it out. And, perhaps if it gets to the point that we think we can bring it to town meeting to have that discussion. But I think there's pros and cons to everything.
And the other thing that you might look at is whether it is because, most of our seniors who are selling their homes, that's their asset that they've saved their whole life for.
Mhm.
And so you could qualify this to say whether that Great Barrington residents are excluded from this, so that they could benefit from selling their home
Mhm.
as opposed to being penalized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with this, there could be provisions made for that, or if you want to pass it on to a family member. I think this is why it's worth exploring and thinking of all these pros and cons. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about benefits is sometimes there's unintended consequences too. And,
Yep.
we make sure we understand what all those are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we certainly don't want to adversely impact the property prices in town. I know I spelled that wrong. Hard to look when it's so small. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that's a good point. So is it worth, I'd be happy to start looking into it. Does anyone else want to work with me on this, or should I, talk to Chris about it and see what was this subcommittee would like to next steps? I don't think we should start working on anything until we've looked at everything and see what priorities Chris and the town would put on things as well.
Okay, all right.
But
We'll
this
put
is
it on our list. Great. And I think he had mentioned also tax abatements. Was the planning board looking into a tax abatements for developers that wanted to, instead of market rate housing, to create affordable housing? Was that something planning board's looking into?
Well, it's something we recommended, but we can't do that because we don't do tax abatements.
Yeah,
That's not a zoning bylaw.
exactly. So is that's something that we should add here, or is that already covered?
I think you already have it, don't you?
Let's see. I think I probably did. Offer tax. Yeah. I think this is it. Yeah. So this was another potential home rule petition. Okay. So is there anything, I'm just kind of going down, but is there anything else that kind of came up?
Yeah, I was thinking about the thing you had from the One Berkshires that about the 30% rule.
Oh, yeah.
How in the world could we actually change that? I mean,
I think this is state legislation
Yeah, that's an
that we
ADA
would have
thing,
to
right?
advocate. Yeah. This is more of advocacy and really bringing this up, either working on a regional level, saying this is an issue. This is something that One Berkshire brought up. So it's not something that Great Barrington could lead on their own, but we could lead the advocacy work and compel the state to take a look at this. So that was just, I'll click on this so you can see where I got this from.
Yeah, and I have a feeling it's a lot bigger than the state even.
Mhm.
Start
Yeah.
talking about ADA requirements.
Yeah, this is a long term. Everyone's seen this, right? The One Berkshire housing. It's quite, it's quite detailed. It just came out last year or at the beginning of this year. But this along with the housing needs assessment from 2020 from Great Barrington, I think is, a really good blueprint. So if you haven't looked at this, I'd be happy to send this link to you guys. But this is where it came from, Malcolm.
Mhm. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very good. I mean, I agree with it, but it's.
Yeah.
I just wonder whether it's worth our time to really dive into it,
Yeah.
because it's a much bigger issue than anything we can deal with.
Yeah.
Let anybody listen to us about.
Exactly. And this could be the thing that, when we're starting to populate this level of effort, I mean, this could be an H, straight away.
16 point.
Yeah, exactly. But, at least we're aware of it, and it's something that we should keep our eye on. Anything else, Garfield or Jonathan, since our last meeting that's come to your
The matchmaking program that you refer to?
Yeah. This was just kind of a brainstorm that I was thinking about, and other than realizing, and I'm going to be an empty nester soon, but some of us will have empty rooms, and I may have a very small house, but there might be a point that you want to rent a room, you want to try to help the community. You're uncomfortable with going online and just fishing for people. And you might trust the town, so to speak, or another entity to do the vetting. And, you might say, well, I have 2 rooms available. And there might be the town, let's say, that vets, that matches people with extra rooms versus people that are looking for rooms. And having that go between might ease some of the tension that people feel about making that decision and letting strangers in their room. So that was kind of along the lines what I was thinking of. It wasn't really fleshed out more than that, but just knowing that, especially with seniors, a lot of times they're not on social media, they're not online, they do have extra rooms. And if there was a way to make it easier for them to feel comfortable letting a stranger in, and knowing that this person has been vetted, establishing the rules and the regulations, that might be something that we might want to explore.
As long as we had a way to make sure we definitely are protecting the seniors, because some of us, I am a senior, we get played sometimes by people with the best intent. And I just have a question, and I know there's some better minds than mine out there that will let me know, that the nursing home, I guess, was just sold to another group of folks, if you will. Is there any way that we could include that in some way of offering some incentive for some workforce housing or affordable housing in that building?
Could we finish the last discussion before we go into that?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't see why you don't have matchmaking program between property owners and long-term tenants with rooms to spare.
And long-term tenants. Sure. I mean, we could absolutely put that. So,
Isn't that what
so you're
long-term
saying
renters do?
subletting, or what are you leaning towards, Jonathan?
Tenants lose partners, tenants have family move out, tenants do all sorts of things, and they have spare rooms. Why wouldn't you want to include them in that discussion?
Oh, okay.
Okay. I mean, it's not that you don't want to, it just hasn't been thought of. So, okay. tenants. So if, let's say you have a 2-bedroom apartment and your
roommate moves out.
roommate moves out, then you have an
You
extra.
need a new
Yeah.
roommate.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Good point, Jonathan. So any more thoughts about that? Like who, this might be something that a private entity would facilitate this.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I'm not sure whether our town staff could do it, so.
Right.
we'd have to-
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I have it down for 4, because this is one of the things, I mean, similar to Windflower with what Construct's looking at right now. One of the initiatives that we're exploring is kind of really being a go-between between businesses and that are looking for places to house their staff and Construct. So in theory, let's say a business might have vetted an employee and might say, well, this person's been vetted. We know that, they're good for their money. They have a job. So that, in theory, that would be a kind of a go-between to ease the process. So along those same lines with this matchmaking program that I was just kind of thinking about, that if we could facilitate that, or, some entity, a private entity could facilitate that, that might be a great way to create more housing and repurpose existing housing. So,
I mean, it could also be a social media site that the town creates.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of the options I was thinking of is the town would come up with a separate site and do this on the side or private. So, yeah.
Well, if we have a private, we'd also have to make sure they meet a set of rules as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it might be that, an app is created and the town, buys into that. So I just, I'm aware of so many people that have homes with extra rooms, but they don't really want to go on to, the social media sites or online to find someone.
Yeah, well, and every year at the country club, we have 2 assistant pros who come in from out of town, are always looking for housing. And
Exactly.
this year, the tennis pro couldn't find any, so we lost him.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So,
So,
I mean, if we can get these, we can have some kind of marketplace for, rooms
Tennis
or
pros, huh?
whatever. It's a job.
yeah,
Somebody
okay.
spends money in the community.
So is that worth, I'll kind of put not a priority, but just kind of make a note that we seem to be kind of interested in
Yeah.
something.
See, I mean,
exploring.
this may be the kind of thing when we do bring people, different groups in to discuss these things, there may be some discussion with one of the nonprofits to say, okay, is this something that might, fit up your alley, and what kind of incentive would they need to run something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay. Great. Anyone else? Garfield, do you want to bring back your point that you're making?
Oh, just that I was not aware of how that really worked, and if it was something we could do. I had asked Mark about it, I guess the other day when we had a little meeting about that nursing home that was kind of like a hot topic for a while, and it just kind of died away. And then he told me it was sold to another private company. And I didn't know if this was something that we could approach them with, since we were talking about incentives. That's something we could incentivize them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is with a private developer, as far as I know, that they want to make condos. And I think that if they were seeking financing from the town, they might come to us and seek financing in lieu of, maybe offering some of it for affordable. But I don't, it's up to the private developer, really. It's up to us, but it's good to keep on our radar for sure. Yeah. I mean, that would have been an ideal site for some workforce and affordable housing.
Right on this bus line, et cetera, feet from town, police station, hospital. Yeah, it's got all the makings.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where you would really hope that some of the stakeholders with affordable housing, such as Construct or the CDC or the Affordable Housing Trust, that they would have a pool of money that they could jump on these opportunities and get a property before it goes into private developers' hands.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. Jonathan, did you have anything you wanted to add to this spreadsheet? I mean, obviously, we'll be adding as we go, but just to, if something came up since the last meeting.
No.
Okay. I do know that I've requested town staff to look at apartments in town, downtown, that are quote affordable, just with knowing what's happening with the Berkshire Block apartment, or sorry, the Mahawi Block apartments, and being concerned that some of the other apartments downtown might go up for sale, and we might want to know if that happens or is about to happen to keep those affordable. So that would be involving an inventory of downtown apartments and who owns that. Another request that I made from town was to, take a look at the blighted properties, or the properties that might have a lien against them, so we could, be the first in line to jump on an auction or direct it towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So then again, that's something that we would town or the assessor. So the level of impact, we'd have to take a look at that. So that's what this, target blighted properties. Jonathan, I had mentioned the Attorney General's Abandoned Housing Receivership Fund program. So that's so Construct has we're a receiver, we're a state receiver, a nonprofit state receiver. So we've taken 2 properties in Beckett. We sold one recently, and we have another in Beckett, and we're also working with Lennox. So we have 2 properties that they've taken over through this receivership fund program. So that is something a municipality could jump on, and you don't, Construct does pay prevailing wages anyways, but so I think you'd mentioned something about that might be out of the realms of possibilities for Great Barrington to take advantage of. But it's something that I've mentioned to Chris. Unfortunately, it's very laborious, and it's it's one unit at a time. But it's something that it might be just good to be on our radar. So that's
Well,
what.
receivership can also go to auction. Did you sell things?
Yep. Well, yeah,
Auction in Beckett?
we had a lottery. So anyone that was income qualified would apply, and it would be a lottery. So it was done that, we weren't able to judge any ownership. As long as they income qualified, that was fine. And then it was picked through a lottery. So it was a lottery rather than auction.
And then any work they do does not have to be prevailing wage.
Yeah. So it is, it is a lot of work, and but it's something that, if a property is under a tax lien or is blighted, that's something that the town could become a receiver and follow through.
You might reach out to Pittsfield, because they have a ton of these.
Mm-hmm.
They have receivership everywhere.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Again, that's something, a resource that, we just don't have town staff to do this. I know with Beckett, it took us years to get through that. And that was just one house, single house that we've given to a couple in Great Barrington, actually. But I'll make a note to look at Pittsfield. Okay. So I'm not going to keep you guys long, because I know it's 2:00, but what I'll do is I'll do a PDF of where this is right now, so we can see where we left off. And I'll be sharing this with Chris. So he and I, and probably Mark, will take a look at this, and maybe Steve. And then the next meeting, we'll bring this and we'll continue the discussion. And if there's other strategies that come across your path, and between now and the next meeting, just let me know, and I can add it to the this sheet. So that sound good? Can we let's just see first, before we open up to citizens and the press, can we pick our next meeting time, or does anyone else have anything else to say?
Yes, I'm pleased with the way our meeting went today, as opposed to that. I thought we were kind of productive today, and I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks to everyone. Does this work for everyone in terms of the Tuesdays at 1. Can we keep this time?
Good with me.
So November 8th, actually, sorry, November 8th,
It's election day. It's not
election,
that far
yeah,
away.
yeah, that's election day. November 15th, do you want to move it one more?
I'm flying out to the West Coast on November 15th and won't be back until first week in December.
Ooh, lucky you.
So I can meet by Zoom, but not on the 15th.
Okay.
Uh,
Jonathan and Garfield, do you guys have a time that's works for you?
I mean,
This is
is there a
probably
reason why,
my,
is there a reason why we couldn't meet on election day though?
They really discourage it and it's,
Oh, do they? Okay.
yeah, it's not,
I have 3 weeks from now.
yeah. I mean, we could meet in 3 weeks, exactly. We could move it up one. So we could meet on the 1st, if that works for you guys. And
Okay with me?
yeah, Jonathan, are you okay for the 1st?
I think so.
Okay.
Although it is the first day of American Indian Heritage Month.
I saw that. Okay, so I'll put down November 1st at 1 p.m. If there's any changes, I'll share with the committee. Yeah. So anything before I open up to citizens speak? Okay, anyone in the citizens pool would like to speak? We have, just so you know, we had 9 panelists. We have 5 attendees with the 4 panelists, so. Okay, anyone from the, oh,
We
sorry.
left them speechless. That was amazing.
Or we bore them. Okay. And then my cats didn't make an appearance this time. That's good. Anyone from the press? Eileen Mooney, I'm gonna let you speak. Okay. Hi, Eileen.
Hi. Is the worksheet going to be put on your website page?
Yes, I'll have a PDF and we'll put that up along with the minutes. So that will be.
Great.
Yeah.
And are you going to put or to resume putting recordings of your meetings on that page?
I think that's a staff resource. Amy is in charge of taking the recordings and going through them. So I'm not sure. I can ask her, certainly, Eileen, about the housing subcommittee meetings if she's able to put those in. So I'll certainly ask her.
They used to be put up.
Yeah.
Haven't for a year. So
Okay. I'll ask her.
thank you.
Thanks.
I'll second that request actually, because I've been participating in so much of the discussions. I haven't really taken detailed minutes. So.
Yeah, it's, you're doing a great job, Malcolm. I want to thank you because I certainly could not do that. So I
But
really
I will need the recording.
Okay. All right. I'll certainly ask that. I see Sheila. So Sheila Clary is going to be speaking. Hi, Sheila.
Hi there. I'm just wondering, with all of the work to be done, if it's ever been pitched to have a town employee who's entirely housing related.
To have a housing, a designated housing staff.
Employee, like a new position,
Yeah.
or to divert someone's existing position.
Yeah. I think Sheila, and correct me if I'm wrong, housing subcommittee, that we did discuss that on the first day. We thought that to spend the money to hire an additional staff person, it's something that we could do internally. But that was discussed, whether to designate some funds for that position. Is that correct? Did I hear that? Thank you, Sheila.
Yeah, I didn't participate in that discussion, but I do think that as we look through this list, the weight of the things we want to do may argue for a housing coordinator in town staff. But there's no specific proposal for that yet, I don't think.
Yeah. I think that that was covered briefly on the very first go around of the housing worksheet. And we put a note to handle internally, but as we can, quickly see, there's quite an awful lot to tackle. So that might be something we want to bring up during budget season. So great. Okay. Anything else that anyone would like to say? Any last minute thoughts? Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any second? Anyone want a second?
Oh, Lee, is
guess-
Bill Shine asking to speak? I see his name.
I see his name. I don't see his hand though.
Okay.
It's
Oh, sorry, I think
permitted.
I clicked it accidentally.
Oh, okay. All
This
right.
Zoom thing is so new to everybody, you know?
It is, it is. Well, you're always welcome to speak, but I'm going to disable you now, so. Okay. All right, well, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys November 1st at 1 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.